Imagine changing sizes multiple times in a day, interacting in a community where everyone was insane, and being subject to a queen that just wanted to cut off everyone's head. This is Alice's dream world. I've always been fascinated by this world that Lewis Carroll creates in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And so my selection is from one of my favorite chapters in the book called A Mad Tea Party. A table was set under a tree in front of the house. The March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep. The other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking above it. Very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice. Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all sitting together at one corner of it. "No room, no room!" they all cried when they saw Alice coming. "There's plenty of room," Alice said indignantly, as she came and sat down at one large armchair at the end of the table. "Have some wine," said the March Hare in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but all she saw was tea. "I don't see any wine," she remarked. "There isn't any," said the March Hare. "Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it," said Alice angrily. "It wasn't very civil of you to sit down when you weren't invited," said the March Hare. "I didn't know it was your table," Alice replied. "It's laid for a great many more than 3. "Your hair wants cutting," the Hatter said. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity. This was his first speech. "You should learn to not make personal remarks," said Alice with some severity. "It's very rude." The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he said was, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" "Come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I'm glad they've begun asking riddles." "I believe I can guess that," she said aloud. "Do you mean that you think you can find what the answer is?" said the March Hare. "Exactly so," said Alice. "Then you should say what you mean," the March Hare went on. "I do," Alice hastily replied. At least, I mean what I say." "That's the same thing, you know." "It's not the same thing one bit," said the March Hare. "You might as well say, 'I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.'" "You might as well say," said the Hatter, "that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like." "You might as well say," said the Dormouse, who seemed to still be talking in his sleep, said that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe. "It's the same thing to you," the Hatter said, and here the conversation dropped. The party sat silent for a minute while Alice thought over all she knew about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't much. The Hatter was the first to break the silence. "What day of the month is it?" he said, turning to Alice. He had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily and shaking it every now and then, holding it up to his ear. Alice considered a little and said, "The 4th. "2 days wrong," said the Hatter. "I told you butter wouldn't suit the works," he added angrily at the March Hare. "It was the best butter," the March Hare meekly replied. "Yes, but some crumbs must have gotten in it as well," the Hatter grumbled. "You shouldn't have put it in with the bread knife." The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. He then dipped it in his cup of tea, looked at it again, but all he could think of to say was his first remark. "It was the best butter, you know." Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. "What a funny watch," she said. "It tells the day of the month, but it doesn't say what o'clock it is." "Why should it?" muttered the Hatter. "Does your watch tell what year it is?" "Of course not," Alice replied very readily. "But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together." "Which is the same case with mine," said the Hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to her to have no sort of meaning to it, yet it was certainly English. "I don't quite understand you," she said, as politely as she could. As you can see, Lewis Carroll does a perfect job in creating a nonsensical world. And if you ever need a break from real-world nonsense, like I often do, then step into Wonderland for a little while, and real-world nonsense might seem a little bit brighter.